Good afternoon, all the students and the faculty of Angru, and especially the SV College in Tirupati. Today, my talks mostly focus on the how the biofortified maize being developed through marker-assisted breeding program. Then again, what are the challenges and what are the realities? Many people ask that how to develop fortified crops and whether it is feasible, whether the marker-assisted breeding is working, or whether it's commercially viable. So many questions will be there when you see the topics. So let me address all the concerns about how can we move forward, what are the technological challenges, and if you apply this technology, what are the realities which we are going to face. So those things I'm going to discuss in the coming slides. So this is my more than 2 decades of journey with maize on different traits improvement. So mainly today my talk is mostly on the fortified maize by beta carotene and some of the quality traits. Okay. So you all know that many of the any biofortification program which is going around the world, either Harvest Plus program or CIMIT program or the National Network program or the state program, everybody look for the improved nutrition. That is the question now. So how to increase the nutrition? So again, if you talk the nutrition, we can tell many things, whether it is we target the pregnant woman or the malnutrition in the children, and many of the foods which we are taking sometimes which have nutrition is deficient, some of the vitamin deficiency, some cases iron zinc deficiency. So people talking about the fortification, we may be asking about whether we have to get a good food like carotenoid rich carrot or other vegetables or fruits we can take and we can manage. But how far we can manage, because we are eating daily requirement of like cereals. If you take very huge quantity, we are taking as a rice or wheat or the maize eaters or the tapioca or sweet potato. So those foods which have taken very huge quantity, when you fortify with certain nutrients, so that case there is a good possibility that we need not bother about the delivery system. We need to incorporate in the food itself, then it is solve all the problems. That's why many of the fortification program, either international programs or the national program, they are targeting on the crops which are having more cultivated or more food it's giving that. So again, the cost of effectiveness and which decide the fortified selection of fortified crops and that the trait which are amenable for fortification. These are all the things which again taken into consideration while choosing the crops for biofortification program. Okay, so when you talk about the maize, many of you know that the maize, when you go to the market, we can many of the maize which are commercially which in India available, we have either dent type or flint type. These commercial maize hybrids, which mostly more than 80% which been used for poultry industry, and only 30% is being used for human consumption in terms of direct or indirect way in the different kind of flours, etc. So the whenever the food stuff nowadays, when you take any kind of flours, there is a, you can see that it's been used on many floors which we've been used as a maize flour as a complement. That is a one way. Another thing that people are working in the nowadays, the sweet corn is getting popular in the market. So the sweet corn is another one big target. When the children or the young children which are affected by vitamin A deficiency, so those cases, when you put the carotenoid in the sweet corn, that is also one good way. Then people working on QPM, quality protein maize, where the QPM types mostly on the hill areas where the foods which are the people consume as a complete food, they use maize as a highly dependent one. Then there are types like popcorn and baby corn. These also been people are regularly consuming. But the problem is when you use the baby corn, it is harvested just before fertilization. It is around 45 days will be harvested. If you take maize as a crop as a 110 days or 20 days, the maize harvesting for baby corn it comes 45 days. Okay, those time you cannot, the carotenoid synthesis pathway, it's not at all taking up, because it's after fertilization around 70th or 65 70th day the carotenoids start accumulation in the grains. So again, when you ask the question where to put the beta carotene in the maize, so baby corn may not be suitable. Similarly, people use a popcorn. Popcorn is another one which people like much, but popcorn, the problem is the popping quality is the one which always caramelize the carotenoid. So when you deep fry or when you do this kind of frying type, those time any carotenoid, it will be caramelized. So we cannot get the as effective dose which you are required. So these two things are not possible, but other kind of corns you can people target for the increase the beta carotene. Okay. So coming to the carotenoid pathway, so we can choose first of all, if you want to fortify the crops, in case of maize, I am talking. These are all the ways the people consume on different patterns. So you have to target which part people are eating sweet corn, or they taking as a corn as a complete food or regular rations. So either those targeted things you can in progress. Another thing, okay, we choose on the which type of corn we can target. Second one is whether the corn, when you look on the corn improvement, it is not already there are many type of corns already I shown you. Sometimes the phenotype trait is there. For example, if you select a sweet corn type, normally the sweetness is controlled by SH2 gene, Shankan gene. When you look on the sweet corn, look at the sweet corn, you can, when you make a sweet corn with normal corn, when you make a crosses, we can see that there is a normal round plumpy one and also shrunken one. This shrunken are the corn which is having more of sweetness. So when you make a crosses between normal corn and sweet corn, when you select the F2 seeds, the corn have great advantage. That's why the McClintock got Nobel Prize by simple observation on the maize crops. He can able to resolve many hypotheses by using maize system. So simply by you can select by F2s, we can shrunken seeds. If you select, is always linked with the sugary gene. Another thing, people use the white and brown types. Many of the total carotenoid types, some of the colored corn that people are selecting, and sometimes amylose content. So high amylose and low amylose type also people are selecting. So that also possible simply by seeing the kernel morphology we can select. So same way waxy and non-waxy type, high amylose, low amylose type, it's easily been selected by mere morphological trait or mere kernel observations. Okay, so the simple morphological observations or simple selection by using these traits, it's possible in case of corn many traits. Why marker-assisted breeding is needed? Why we are applying the marker and we are going for many of the marker-assisted breeding program in many biofortification program or some of the other traits also? Because some of the traits is very difficult to handle by mere morphologically or mere selection process by seeing the phenotype alone. So one such is carotenoid. So carotenoid cannot be, even though carotenoid we can say, carotenoid is a color pigment. So the carotenoid pathway is been well studied in many crops. So people, when you target on the provitamin A, for example, the carotenoid pathway, we call it as it's a gold rush with many miners. So it is like a gold mine. The people working on carotenoid pathway, not in the maize, there are many crops people are addressing in the carotenoid because this has many advantages. For example, when the carotenoid pathway started with geranyl pyrophosphate, the phytane synthase enzyme, which can able to synthesize either alpha branch phytane desaturase, and so there are many enzymes which lead to a alpha carotene. Another side is the beta carotene. Then alpha carotene, lycopene epsilon cyclase, beta cyclase. This will finally end up with alpha carotene, and another branch will end up with the beta carotene. Then alpha carotene to lutein to finally end up with the ABA. So geranyl pyrophosphate started from there and end up with the ABA. So this ABA, up to this pathway, you can manipulate many places because this pathway is well resolved in many crops like cassava, maize, wheat, canola, banana, carrot, orange. So so many crops, this pathway, the carotenoid pathway is similar, but there is small changes everywhere. Some of the branching pathways, some crops it will changing. So the target is whenever, if you want to have more provitamin A, why we are looking, because for better eyesight for carotenoid, we need a beta carotene should be very high. That's why the beta carotene will convert into a provitamin A. More percentage of beta carotene being converted into the provitamin A. Provitamin A is the precursor for many of the vitamin A things. Okay, so this case, when you talk on the case of maize or in other crops, which we say it's shown in the slide, it's a very beautiful slide. We can, when the people, not only the maize, people working on maize, the people interested to work in other crops, which I shown you here, they all look on this pathway. And you can manipulate the pathway. That's why I told you that it is a gold rush with many miners. Many miners can get in and they can able to get a mini product out of that. So this case, maize, we are concentrating only on the from general pyrophosphate to the ABA. There is alpha carotene. Another side is beta carotene. So this pathway, it's been well studied in case of maize. So using this pathway, we try to manipulate the maize for increasing the beta carotene. Okay, so we may be asking questions. What happened to beta carotene? Why you are all now people are talking about fortification of maize with the beta carotene? Always many of the plant breeders or recent day the molecular breeders, the people, when the plant breeding process started very long back, when the Teosinte from the Teosinte to maize, there is a lot of changes happens. This is more than 6,000 to 7,000 years of history from the multiple branch of corn. Each corn have very smaller cob, which only had 2 rows of cob, 2 rows of kernel. Each kernel may be 5 to 6 kernel from one row. From this, we now move to a bigger size kernel. That is means we have 14 to 16 number of rows, more than 14 to 16 rows, and each row is around 40 to 50, 35 to 40 kernels. So we changed the idiotype from a small Teosinte wild to the present day corn. Okay, so why we did? Because we want yield. Always the farmers always want the yield. Breeders always want the yield because the consumer, the ultimate, the farmer producer want yield. So we also develop a hybrids which have more and more yield. That is our objective. Because we don't have food means that's the only way to, we have to increase the yield and produce more and give the people. But now the situation is changing. Now we are surplus. Many of the countries have surplus, food surplus is very high. So now people thinking that why we not only the quantity of food, we also now want to put more quality food. That means we want a more quality. When you take a rice or maize, people want anti-diabetic rice. The people want more iron and zinc type. So like that medicinal rice. So thing. Likewise maize also the people want fortified maize. That is mean increase beta carotene, increase quality protein, increase the sugar content. Many things they are looking, but that during the process of 7,000 years of evolutionary changes, we lost many of the tribes. When you look on the CIMMYT germplasm, this is the gene bank line, we can see many kind of variations which are you can easily observe in the maize kernel, like maize, not only rice, also like that. So during the selection process of so many years, we look only the yield. So we lost many things knowingly, unknowingly. Not it's a purposefully, we unknowingly we lost many things. Now it's a time we can able to capture, we can regain some of the trait because already the gene bank, there are a lot of material available. So if you find interesting trait, one such trait is beta carotene. It's already found in some of that temperate inbred line. Again, every inbred, when you see that, there is a, if you take 2 inbreds, when you sequence, there is a 1.4% variation between 2 individuals, 2 inbred lines. Every 44, when you take an maize genome sequences, every 44 bases, you can have one variation, one SNP will be there. Either it's a functional or the non-functional SNP, but every 44 base pair, there is a one changes. So that much of variability is still present in the maize. So you can use that opportunity and try to get some of the trait which we needed. Okay, coming to the deeper on the how the carotenoid pathway, when you look on that, we want to manipulate the carotenoid pathway in the maize and try to put the carotenoid in our elite maize hybrids or inbred lines. Okay, so I already told you this is the general pyrophosphate phytene synthase, which make the phytone desaturase and also cryptoxanthin, which make that when you get a alpha like lycopene epsilon cyclase, which make a beta carotene, then beta carotene converted to beta cryptoxanthin, zeaxanthin, lutein. So these things which are in this pathway. Another side, lycopene beta cyclase, which convert to the lycopene into the beta carotene, then zeaxanthin, anthraxanthin, viloxanthin, and neoxanthin. So every step, there is a gene which already been involved. There is a hydrolase, hydroxylation happens. So every time this, when every changes happens, every gene play, and if you block any one pathway, you can increase the flux or decrease the flux, like you can manipulate different kind of carotenoid. By that, whatever you needed, you can able to manipulate. So that's why this pathway is very important. Okay, coming to the provitamin A pathway in case of maize, it has been well resolved in case of maize. I already told you, from geranyl pyrophosphate to lycopene, there are many genes or enzymes are involved for conversion. After that is a key thing in case of maize. Either it goes alpha branching, there is alpha carotene, or it go to a beta. So when you lycopene is converted to alpha carotene, if you block the pathway, that is lycopene epsilon cyclase or beta cyclase responsible for conversion of lycopene to alpha carotene. When you block the pathway, then you can increase the flux of beta carotene. That is one way. So one side, if you block this pathway, it always automatically will increase the quantity of beta carotene. Okay, in this pathway, there is a gene which they already been worked on that. There is a markers also available. So if you block that, you can get more beta. Another way, if you block the pathway in the later side, for example, beta cryptoxanthin, beta carotene to beta cryptoxanthin, if you block, or you can reduce the synthesis of beta cryptoxanthin, so we can increase the concentration of beta carotene. That has been CRTRB1 gene, which has been well resolved. So the way this is, either it's a conversion being reduced, or it can divert from the increase the carotenoid. So variation is related to interbranch conversion or particularly through hydroxylation. This is the method by which the people increase the beta carotene. Okay, now, so the CRTRB1 gene, which has been responsible for the this case, which always helps for increase the beta carotene synthesis. Okay. Again, I told you that for synthesis of any provitamin A, beta carotene contribute more than the cryptoxanthin or the other carotenoids. So that's why we target mostly on the beta carotene. Okay. Like now we know that which is the target, which are the maize type which are going to convert, what purpose, and second only the importance of the pathway. Then we know where the gene is there, and now we can start manipulation. How to do that? So the first evidences came during the Chandler 2008, where there is a major QTL which is present in chromosome 10, which is responsible for the CRTRB1 gene, which is responsible for the increased synthesis of beta carotene compared to other carotenoids. This is the first report which came as early 2008. Later 2010, this is the first, it's a very beautiful paper on Young et al. If you read that, it will be a very interesting paper. It comes under natural genetics. They clearly resolve the gene. So the gene is very well characterized gene, more than 2 kb gene. So this gene, when you look on that, there are a lot of insertion is there. This gene is the blocks are these are all the exon region, some of the intron region, and where all the insertion happens, they thoroughly study. The main key thing is that in the 3-T region, there is a 3 kind of alleles present. One is if the gene is normal, there is no insertion. That is the CRTRB gene. There is no insertion, no truncation on the gene. It is helpful for the high beta carotene synthesis. If there is a truncation, for example, either small insertion of 325 base pair insertion on the gene, or bigger insertion of 1250 base pair insertion in the gene, these 2 kind of insertion, some inbreds have small insertion, some have big insertion. Whatever may be if it is truncated, then there is you won't get any kind of positive favorable allele for beta carotene. So this is a very simple logic we can explain. So when we look on that, so once you have the gene and you know where the changes occur, then you can go for designing the primer. When you design the primer for CRTRB1 gene, here there are 3 kind of primers. When this is the region where small insertion of 325 base pair or large insertion of 1250 base pair. If there is a small insertion, we have to put the primers. We put 1 forward primer, 2 reverse primers to target this region. This is a forward primer. This is the reverse primer. This is another reverse primer. For example, if some of the maize inbred lines which have small insertion, then usually we'll get 325 base pair insertion happens. when you do PCR, you will get a two kind of product, 325 base pair insertion. Then you can get 296 base pair PCR product, another product on 875. This is unfavorable allele. Another thing, if you have bigger size of insertion in the gene, 1250 base pair insertion is there, then you will get again same kind of 296 base pair, because you have 65 as forward primer, 62 as reverse primer. This amplified 296. This case also, this case also. And also, if you have the bigger insertion, this primer will catch 65F and 66R. So then it will give two kind of product, 296,221 base pair. So it's a very simple PCR logic. And you have candidate genes, you put a primer accordingly, you try to amplify whether you have the small insertion or big insertion or no insertion. If there is no insertion, normally you will produce a 543 base pair. This is the favorable allele. The gene is perfect. So this gene will be, you can able to screen in the inbreds and you can able to get it. So this is why the people first initially started in the marker-assisted breeding program. When you screen all the tropical inbred line, you may not get any kind of this kind of situation, this first situation. We don't have the favorable allele. Most of the inbreds, even now, if you screen it, all are unfavorable. We don't have that. So that's why resulted in many of the inbreds which you are popular inbreds, we have less than 1 ppm of beta carotene. Again, you may ask questions, what will be the ppm concentration? Just less than 1 ppm in case of many of the tropical inbred lines. Okay, if it is this kind of favorable allele is there, what is the concentration of beta carotene? It is more than 10 ppm. Now 10 ppm or sometimes 15 ppm some of the inbreds. So you can see 1 ppm and 15 ppm, there is a 15 times increase in the beta carotene content. That's why the people are looking for that to convert their own line to the high beta carotene line. So we also initially started during 2010, initially after the paper came, we started screening our inbreds. We could not get much. Rarely we got one inbred which have a little bit high beta carotene content. And also many of the inbreds are unfavorable. So we got some CIMMYT. I already told you in the germ plasm, CIMMYT germ plasm, it's a temperate germ plasm. They screen also, there's a lot of lines, then finally come out with HP647-15. This is one of the donor for universal, many of the countries they're using. This have around 10 ppm of beta carotene. So now we have the candidate, the inbreds which have more than 10 ppm, and many of our tropical inbreds don't have less than 1 ppm. So only option is to transfer these high beta carotene trait into your elite inbred. So that is the only way we can do that. So how we do that? Sometimes people will ask that we also have in the northeastern line, northeastern land races or many of the maize which been consumed in the hilly regions. There are a lot of colored variations you observe, that violet color, orange color, the many kind of northeastern land races available. Whether it's have the carotenoid or not, people ask. Yes, it's have carotenoid, not like expected like beta carotene. The other carotenoid like zeaxanthin, violocyanthine, the other carotenoids are there. But our target is mostly on the beta carotene. So we also screen the northeastern type, one of our northeast project. So this paper recently came. So we already screened almost more than 50 land races of northeastern region. We couldn't found the favorable allele in case of, but some of the northeastern lines, which are sometimes they are not using the hybrid, single cross hybrid, they mostly use the composite. Some of the population, mixed population, we got some heterozygote. Some of the alleles which are heterozygous condition, because it's a synthetic or composite type. So possibilities of heterozygotes are there. So we have to self it and we have to bring it to the homozygous condition. Same time, people also, IRI, Feroz and Vignesh both are working on the high beta carotene trait. So they also screen many of their inbreds, and also they got some of the CIMMYT inbred lines. So they got a lot of positive allele. There is 543 base pair. Some of the CIMMYT donors, they able to screen and find out some of the CIMMYT donor lines which have high beta carotene, that is favorable allele which they have. So everybody looking for the CIMMYT line. So CIMMYT also given some of the donors for high beta carotene donor. So now we are ready to use it for the marker-assisted breeding program. Okay, so when you want to start the marker-assisted breeding program, everybody asks the question whether convert to one inbred or two inbred. So maize is hybrid, mostly people using the hybrids. you need a female parent, one inbred, male also another inbred. So unless you convert both the inbred, this is a recessive trait. So unless you convert both the inbreds, you cannot get expected level of beta carotene when the hybrids are going to the market. So that case, you have to convert both inbred, female parent and male parent, whatever may be the type which has, whatever purpose you are using. But when you go for a hybrid, you have to convert both the lines. Okay. Okay, coming to the marker-assisted breeding program, I now already told you where you are having a high beta carotene donor with us. Now we have the inbreds. Our inbreds are very poor in beta carotene. So now, we know for transfer we need a marker. We need the markers, and its marker should be validated. So I already explained you how the marker is working. So the marker in this case, favorable allele, I told you this is the 543 base pair. Unfavorable allele is 296 base pair. Take a simple concept. You take a parent one. This is our local inbred line, popular Co6 maize parental line. This is the donor line. So HP647 is the donor line. This is the recurrent parent, which we are going to use it. So when you make a process, you will get a F1 hybrid. So this is a codominant marker. Many of you studied your marker course or the genetics. So codominant marker, F1 will get both the alleles, this heterozygotes, it's a heterozygote. So when you screen these parents like that, 1230 also another parent based hybrid, because I told you 2 parents simultaneously you have to convert it. So these parents also, when you screen it, the other parent is having unfavorable allele, our local inbred, this is the donor, F1 have both alleles. So, okay. So this case, we are going for a simple backcross breeding program. Marker-assisted backcross breeding. So you already, many of your students of genetics or biotechnology, you know that how the backcross breeding is done. So make a crosses. This is your recurrent parent. This is your donor parent. Make a cross, get a F1, and again this F1 being again tested with a recurrent parent. So the F1 being crossed with the recurrent parent, and you will get back to BC1. Like that, you have to go BC2, and then you have to do selfing. We can get BC2 F2. In this program, normally any breeding program, we can go back crossing. We have to look for phenotypically, you can select it. But this case, we have to only use the marker because no other way. Because beta carotene estimation has to be a destructive method. You have to extract the beta carotene and then you have to quantify it by HPLC. It's a very laborious process and you have to do HP. And again, it's a destructive method. So in the segregating progenies, you cannot use this method to check your presence of beta carotene, and it's very difficult to handle the progenies also. So what we'll do, we have F1, so we have both the alleles. You check whether the donor and recipient parent allele is there, fine. Then you have to go for backcross one. Again, when you go for backcross one, you have 1:1. Whether you have heterozygote, another side is recurrent parent. So select the heterozygote and again backcrossing. Like that, you have to do 2 backcrosses. Sometimes you go for 3 backcrosses in order to recover your recurrent parent genome. After that, the recovery is then your recovery has been tested. Either you go for background markers to get a more recovery, or because foreground selection, normally in the marker-assisted breeding program, people say foreground selection, background selection. Foreground selection, we are using the gene-specific markers in order to track the progenies, whether it's have the beta carotene positive allele there or not. In the background selection, always you have to use the SSR markers, which got distributed to all base chromosomes. You have to use the marker and you have to select it. Okay, I will come for later that one. So whenever you do 2-3 backcrosses, then you have to selfing. After selfing, you will get a 3 kind of segregants, either recurrent parent type or the donor type or heterozygote type. This case, when you come for selfed progeny, you select only the donor type, which only donor type only for foreground, the gene is present or not. Other background, it looks like a recurrent parent. This way, you have to convert both the parents, then finally you can synthesize the hybrid. This is the overall view I want to tell you. Okay, after that conversion, you get a stabilized progeny in the F3, FBC, F2, after that stabilized homozygous line. Now you can have multiply the seeds and you can able to test the carotenoid. So this case, the original line is just 0.3 microgram per gram, that is 0.3 ppm, and the converter line we have 9.1 ppm. Similarly, another inbred line which have 0.5 ppm, then it converter line around 9.38 ppm. So after the 2 generation of backcrossing and selfing, and finally, end of the day, after doing all foreground and background marker selections, be able to recover the original parent type with higher beta carotene content. This is in short about how the marker-assisted breeding being done in order to transfer the carotenoid from the donor parent of temperate inbred to your tropical inbred. Because you can directly use the line, but it's difficult because temperate lines adaptation is very poor. So already you know that maize, unless you have specifically good inbred line, you cannot get a best hybrid. So then adaptable inbred line is needed. So that's why we transfer the beta carotene from a temperate line to the tropical line. Okay. So this is the general program for development of hybrid. Not one, well, I already told you, this is the foreground selection. Every backcross 1, backcross 2, or BC2, F2, every time you look this, make a PCR and check the presence of the heterozygote in every backcross generation, your CRT RB gene is there, 543 base pair is there, or heterozygous condition. Then we use the background markers. I already told you, for background markers, you have to do polymorphism survey between the recurrent parent and your donor parent, and find out which is the donor allele, which is the recurrent parent allele. Then when you select, go for a recurrent screening the segregating progenies or the backcross progenies, always look the background marker which looks like a recurrent parent. That means the parent which you want to transfer. Again, you have to look for the silking, anthesis silking interval, tassel type, cob type, everything phenotype. Also, you have to finally look on that whether it reached the level or not. So this is recently our paper come in the Frontier in Nutrition, where the methodology is very clearly explained. If you can access easily, it's open access only, you can read that. So just I put you the concept how it been worked. So after that conversion, you have to check your whether the inbreds are look like original inbreds. After conversion, after so many conversion, finally you won't get like a recurrent parent. Then even though you have the trait of interest like beta carotene, but your recurrent parent is your final phenotype is not so good, then that is a problem. That's why I'm telling that if the challenges are there, and also if the reality is, if you have so many technological is there, every time you have markers with you, every time you are screening the phenotype, and every time finally you are checking the beta carotene concentration. So these are all things which are being very scrupulously to be followed. Otherwise, sometimes the operation success patient that you may not getting the same inbred like which you are getting. So you will get a lot of segregants which may have beta carotene, but may not look like your recurrent parent type. This is the reality. So whenever marker-assisted breeding, when you go for, you should look on that, how finally you are getting a recurrent parent exactly like your original parent. Otherwise, you cannot get the hybrids as expected performance. So this has been tested in different multi-location trials, and now it is in the MLT. And this is the one hybrid. Exactly, we converted the Co6 popular maize hybrid of Tamil Nadu into a high beta carotene version. So after that, when you check the hybrids, it's around 9 ppm of beta carotene with say same with other all morphological traits almost similar to the Co6 hybrid. This is our ultimate aim that's been now in the advanced trial for the commercial purpose. Okay. So this is about the how we put a single beta carotene trait into elite inbreds and how we went to synthesize a similar type of hybrid, which just incorporation of only the beta carotene alone. There are not only we, there are many people are working all over the many research groups are competing each other and trying to develop their own hybrids with fortified with different things. So when this is the one CIMMYT based program, they already converted many hybrids and they bring it to the market for the in African program. One special thing is they have, yes, earlier they used only a white type maize. So for the roti and other things, they used earlier white type. So that's why the biggest nutrient deficiency is a problem. Now after incorporation of beta carotene, now this is picking up in case of African countries where CIMMYT program is doing. Okay, after conversion many times, after you are successfully converted the maize into a high beta carotene type, now again delivery mechanism. So how it is people are taking. So I already told you that 20% of the maize only consumed as a food in a different ways. So when you prepare the food, whether you prepare a roti or when you prepare sometimes porridge, or sometimes if you prepare a deep fried things like popping. So many purpose people using maize in different way. So whenever you use this, sometimes they use a whole flour or sometimes porridge, sometimes tortillas like roti, sometimes they prepare muffins. So there are many things that people are preferring using their maize, the maize as a food. So always when you use a flour, maize flour, in the improved beta carotene flour, there is no problem of degradation of beta carotene. So only thing when the beta carotene, there are many, it's one of the African study and also many of the Indian studies also coming nowadays because hybrids are now only coming to the market. So what they only if you go for a, when you're making a roti making or chapati, whatever you make it, when you do deep caramelize it, then if you have deep frying, there is a 20% reduction in the carotenoid because it's have degraded. When you go for the heat, for a long heating period, it degraded. And there is a, if you go for popping, it's around 50% degradation of beta carotene is there. So otherwise, if you go for porridge or some flour, as it is being used or muffins, there is a high retention of beta carotene is there. So whenever you develop a high rich beta carotene food, again, for example, if you put the carotenoid in the sweet corn, because no problem, because mostly they boil it and eat, that time no, there is no degradation at all in the beta carotene. So the question is, after you develop a hybrids product, then it's when you go to the market, what is the consumer, what are the people consume the maize or rice, what way they are consuming? If they consume it, whether it's retained the carotenoid, that is another question. So that has to be addressed. Otherwise, whatever you develop, how much you have to tell, how much reduction is there. That is again a question. You have to tell that 40%, 30% reduction is there, that you have to tell. That is the one thing you have to be taken care. Coming to the next thing, this is about the whole about how the carotenoid been get into the food chain and how people are trying to use and different kind of foodstuffs. Then another one is sweet corn. Sweet corn, already the people are, consumption of sweet corn is getting popular in India nowadays. Everywhere, if you go to mall or the cities, there is people always like to eat sweet corn. The question is it's also well-known gene, Shrunken gene. There are 2-3 genes nowadays people targeting. The most common one is super sweet, that is SH2 gene. This SH2 is a shrunken endosperm. So you can see the shrunken one. This is the normal type. This is shrunken type. When you get F1, it will be look like normal. but when you go to F2 and you have to select same type of shrunken one, and you can go for a sweet corn development. So now we are putting we have the beta carotene rich inbreds. Now we transferring the carotene into the sweet corn, because I already told you around 75 to 80 days, there is a high accumulation of carotenoid is there. There's no problem. And also people eating corn as just boiling and eating, there is no degradation of carotenoid also. Now IRI, Dr. Vignesh and Feroz also working for high sweet corn, high beta carotene sweet corn, and we also working on that. So this is normally shrunken, we can easily select simply by seeing the kernel shrink, and you can every backcross or the F2 you can select it, because simple genetics, it segregate for 1:2:1 in the F2s, and also we can easily select shrunken one. But the problem is when you introduce again the beta carotene, then you have to go for the markers. One is sweet, you have to keep the sweetness and also incorporate the beta carotene. In that case, you have to go for the CRT-RB1 based markers to incorporate the beta carotene. That's the one story it is going. Another one. So this is the thing I already told you. So the sweetness already, the one is that major gene is shrunken one, not only the shrunken phenotype, now also the shrunken gene also been characterized. Now the SH2 gene specific marker also available. You can do PCR, you can screen early shielding stage, you can remove the those non-shrunken type only you can select, and also you can use it for pyramiding the beta carotene. That is the one people using SH2 markers also available with us now. Then second one is another trait. Maybe the another trait is QPM is one, because I think I completed 50% of my job on how to convert the beta carotene and how the sweet corn is important. Now another 2 traits which I am very simply explain you. This also have a big importance. Now people are using marker assisted breeding program. One is a quality protein maize, QPM. So quality protein maize, because when you see any maize kernel, you have popcorn type, flint type, dent type, flour type, sweet type. This is the normal classical genetics people always the classes. of the commercial corns are flint or dent types, and sweet corn which have this kind of kernel type, and there is a popcorn is different. So the QPM is mainly target on flint and dent type, which mostly commercially people are cultivating. Those we are incorporating the quality protein. So the how we are incorporating the quality protein. So the gene protein, which is very long story, where it's more than 3-4 decades people are working on the quality protein maize. Either Simit, Indra Vasil got the food prize, or many people are worked and successfully transferred. But the question is, when you maize protein always have deficient in some of the essential amino acids like lysine and tryptophan. So the problem is the maize protein, lysine and tryptophan are lacking. That's why the people want to improve the lysine and tryptophan. So for that, the quality protein maize come into the picture. The people earlier days, there is without markers, they developed the QPM hybrids, QPM varieties, but they have certain problems. The problem is when you look on the kernel, simply by light box, this is the soft texture of the kernel. You can easily see in the light box. So whenever the soft endosperm, you can see that when you put it in the light box, then you can see that light is being exposed to the light box. You can easily screen that. This is all the QPM lines which have QPM trait which been introgressed here. So the question is, whenever you introduce the QPM quality protein, right? Always there is a modifier which always make a kernel become so soft. The problem is, what is the problem with the soft kernel? The kernel softness is giving a lot of problems. Either this have deterioration, seed viability, and many pest and disease attacks. So many problems that if the kernels are so soft in case of maize. So that because of modifiers, the opaque 2 region been actively involved in some of the modifier gene. Because of that, the kernel softness will increase. So only now the marker is what they're doing. The opaque, you have to transfer the opaque 2 gene, which have high amount of lysine and tryptophan, without the inclusion of modifiers. By avoiding the modifiers, we just transfer opaque 2 alone. So for that, we use the markers. This is the gene is characterized opaque 2 gene. There are a lot of SSR marker within the gene itself. So you can use any one of the marker which is showing polymorphism between your donor parent and recurrent parent, and you can use this marker. You can use it for marker backcross breeding. Only thing is you have to avoid the modifiers. So to avoid the modifiers, people always use the light box screening technique to select the opaqueness, less amount of opaqueness, because soft endosperm have opaqueness. So less than 25% opaqueness is there. It is good enough. Your kernel will be very intact and no problem. And you can also, the lysine and tryptophan also will be increased. Instead of 4, you have 4% of lysine and 0.8% of tryptophan are expected in the QPM maize when compared to the normal maize. This is the normal maize, we get only 2% and 0.4% of protein. But in case of QPM, it's have double the content of both lysine and tryptophan. So we transfer this lysine and tryptophan with less modifier effect. So for that, the people use the markers along with the light box screening to avoid the modifiers. So this is the opaqueness. You can see in the light box, you can easily screen it. That is a standard technique people are following. Okay, so now we have the QPM lines which have the markers, opaque 2 gene specific, opaque 2 region, we have SSR marker. We have the beta carotene. So beta carotene also we have specific markers for introgression. So now the pyramiding, nowadays that people want to pyramid many trait in a single background. That is the order of the day now. So we cannot need, we don't want a separate beta carotene hybrid, separate QPM hybrid, because sometimes people are, I want a good quality protein, I want also good beta carotene. Sometimes many traits, let's we call it as nowadays stacking of traits. Nowadays, many companies, they look for trait manager, they try to buy the trait, sometimes stack the trait, so sometimes sell the trait. So these are now the trait business is very common nowadays in the new era of modification. The people always look for many traits in a single background. So like rice also, people pyramid disease resistance and also quality, many things they try to introduce that. So this case also we want to pyramid both the beta carotene and also the QPM together. So already we converted the beta carotene line. So we got some lines we already, I told you, converted into your elite inbred. Now we want to introduce the QPM also in there. So again, simple marker resisted breeding program. This is the recent paper last year. My student Chandran, he published in 2019. So this paper will explain you about the how to permit. In this case, it's again a little bit, every time again, we have beta carotene rich lines in the elite background. Same background, we add the QPM. So QPM markers are there. Again, you have to, every time progenies, you have to screen for beta carotene, 543 base pair favorable allele, and also we have to look for the this QPM trait also with the SSR marker. So we use the SSR marker for screen the QPM. We use the CRTRB1 gene specific marker to screen the beta carotene. So every back cross generation, we look for whether both are present. After that, you have to, after few generation BCTF2 a self-fit and find out double positive. That means it's, progeny should have both beta carotene and also the QPM trait, both should be there. Again, how to check it? So at the end, after that, end of the back crosses and selfing one season, get the progeny, stabilized progeny, homologous progeny, and not only check for the beta carotene by HPLC, and also we look for the lysine and tryptophan, you have to estimate it. And finally, we got the lines which have favorable both the high amount of lysine tryptophan along with the base. There are, again, this project is a network project. Really, the IRI Feroz is coordinating, and PA is working, university, and also Almora, because Almora also working and project. So there are network partners, PAU, TNAU, and we all converted our own inbreds in the elite background. They convert the beta carotene rich and also QPM rich inbreds. So this is the network. Anywhere, many publication you can see from PAU, because and also from IRI you can get many papers how their national network program, how they are converting the elite inbreds, their own inbreds, IRI inbreds or PAU inbreds, converting to the QPM type and also the beta carotene type on some pyramidal lines also. So this is the why Indian biofortification program that people are working on. So another maybe, can I take another 10 minutes, sir? It's okay.
Okay, sir.
Another 10 minutes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can I continue for
Please
another 10 minutes to just export the phytate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
thank
sir.
you.
No problem.
So so far we talk about the how the beta carotene been introduced, how the QPM been targeted, how the pyramiding is done by incorporating both the trait. And another trait is maize is interesting trait is low phytate maize. This is also very interesting trait. Normally the phytate is needed for the seed, for the germination, and also for the initial vigor, and also for the better shielding growth. The question is, when the phytate are in the seed, when the poultry, when the mainly maize is used 80% of poultry or bigger industry, when they take the maize grain, the phosphorus which is present in the grain, maize grain, 80% of the phosphate are bound form of phosphorus. This is a phytate molecule where you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places in the molecule. Phytate phosphorus, where what it's bind everywhere iron and zinc. What they phytate, whenever the phytate is very high, it always chelate iron and zinc in the maize grain. It's become unavailable form. Okay, this is a natural mechanism. Why it become unavailable form? Normally, when a plant, when you put a seed in the soil, when it starts germinating, imbibe and germinate, when the germination process start, the phytase enzyme will start acting. It breaks the phytate and release the micronutrient like iron available for the plant to grow. So that is the natural mechanism, inbuilt mechanism. Now we want to disturb the mechanism because we are consuming a maize as a feed for poultry and bigger industry. They take many of the phytate in the intestine and it is not digested. It goes as a phosphorus pollution. We call it as many of the poultry feeds we check, there is a high level of phosphorus is there. It's been leached to the water system it's always pollute the phosphorus pollution we call. What the poultry industry is doing, they sometimes use phytase enzyme in the digestion itself, in the animal feed itself, try to digest the phytate and try to release the micronutrient for needed thing. But that also will be very costly. And again, it is a very, even then it's a lot of phosphorus pollution is there. So now the question is, can we reduce the phytate? By that we can develop a low phytate maize line. By that, one side we can avoid the phosphorus pollution, other side make more available form of micronutrient, either for the human consumption or animal consumption. And also our traditional food also, we always sprout the grains and we eat it for many baby foods or regular food, because when you sprout any grains, it germinate, that time the phytate being degraded and your micronutrient will release, and there is a good food for the consumption. So the question is how to develop a low phytate maize. This case, the phytate again, it's a very myoinositol 3 phosphate, finally end up with the inositol 6 phosphate. This is inositol 6 phosphate is called phytate. It's a very, very big pathway. It's been worked well also. The question is now from the 3 phosphate to 6 phosphate, there is a mutation. Again, the mutants are there. Victor Robai group US, they develop a mutant, which because of the mutation in this pathway, the reduction of accumulation of inositol 6 phosphate. By that, the phytate is reduced. By that, the free phosphorus is available. So by that, you can use that material for your development of hybrids. So what, again, you have the mutant line. So we got the mutant line for the low phytate line. This is the low phytate donor, like you very, very, very sensitive mutant type. So we want to transfer the low phytate into your elite inbred line. Again, this is the marker-assisted backcross breeding program. So normally, any maize line, if you estimate the phytate content, it is mostly more than 4 milligram per gram of phytate, more than 4 milligram. But low phytate mutant, you have 1.6 milligram per gram of phytate. That is a great advantage. So 4 milligram per gram. So we want to transfer this phytate. Again, this is mapped on chromosome 1. Its LPA2 is very tightly linked. SSR markers are there. You can, once your marker is, have another assay techniques available, high inorganic phosphate assay. Ammonium molybdate, it's become phosphoammonium molybdate assay. It gives a blue color. So whenever you screen a backcross progeny, finally end up the selection, you check for whether my progenies have free inorganic phosphorus instead of bound form. So that been done by high inorganic phosphate assay. By that, we screen the backcross progenies at the end of the markers, and finally we get the lines with the LPA, with the low LPA content. UMI 285 been converted to LPA2 with around 1.9 milligram per gram of phytate. So this is the development of low phytate maize. So this way the people develop. Again, this is also background screening, foreground marker screening, everything we have to do, and finally we got the phytate line. Okay, so this is the one area people also working on the nutrition in the animal nutrition point of view. Develop a low phytate hybrid, and then you can use it for animal feeding. Then it have other phosphorus pollution and phytate problem in the animal intestines can be overcome. So far we discussed about the human nutrition and animal nutrition. So many of the people ask realities. When you come to the realities, there are a lot of techniques available by marker-assisted backcross breeding. Suitable markers are there, donor lines are there. You can transfer in your elite inbred, and you have the techniques of HPLC to quantify the beta carotene. We have the lysine tryptophan colorimetric estimation. So many analytical techniques available, and we can use it. The question is, which trait you want, which background you want, that is the question. So the people locate the trait of interest, whether you want LPA trait, you want CRTRB1 trait, or you want a sweet corn trait. So please select your trait of interest, which is more interesting for you. That is the one thing. Another thing, whenever you create a value for the germ plasm, when you introduce into germ plasm, you choose which material you want to introduce. You cannot randomly introduce this trait after 4 or 5 generation of backcrossing and selfing. Finally, you get a material. If that inbred, if you use for hybrid synthesis, the hybrid will not be a good, then the whole process will be failed. That is the reality. So when you want to, these are the challenges are there after so many challenges, after so many backcrossing, after estimating with the HPLC, so many things, then finally you have to have the elite background. That is another thing. People always, the plant breeders always look for the elite inbred. Otherwise, they won't accept that. Even though if you have the good trait of interest, it will, because it will not go to the commercial field or farmers field. Farmers always want the yield. Along with it, you can add the trait. You cannot reduce the yield and add the trait. That is the thing which many times failed many times. So that is the one, create a value for the germ plasm by adding the trait of interest. Again, for a specific consumer, which is for them you are going to use it. Then again, when you select the markers, these are all the very clear-cut markers I already explained you. This is the gene where the marker is there. If you use the markers, you will get a, when you backcross, you can trace it and use it. Sometimes you use a marker which is very far away from the gene. For example, you have major QTL or major gene. Your marker is just 5 centimorgan or 6 centimorgan away from the trait. When you do backcross, when you select using the markers, there is always possibilities of recombination. So when there is a recombination, your selection is failed, because the recombinant you may not be knowing whether your trait is coming with your progeny or the recombinant is different one. Then you lose the track of your gene. Then finally, end of the day, after conversion, you may not be getting the trait of interest. So that is the one thing. Another thing, when you look for the background selection, always select each chromosome at least 10 to 20 markers and look whether really recurrent parent genome is came or not. You have to look on that. So background genome recovery and also foreground selection, selecting a marker, whether the marker is really tightly linked to the trait of interest. Many times, many people failed. We ambitiously start the marker-assisted breeding program, thought that definitely this marker will go along with the trait of interest. At the end of the day, if there is a recombinance and there is a distance between the gene and there is a, so many complexity, end of the day, you may not end up with the desirable result. So these things are very careful when you designing the marker-assisted breeding, because simply I want to do marker-assisted breeding. If you end up with some of the crops, with some of the traits which are very difficult to handle, if you go there, then finally end up with the highest risk and you may not get the desirable results. So that is the challenges if you are taking, every time you are taking, at the time you have to took the reality also. Where we are ending, what is the reality, what the practical people, whether the leaders going to finally use it, whether accept it or not. So these are all the questions always, not only here, every institute, every forum that people are talking, not only the maize, many crops. So again, the test across the locations and whether this the stacked trait is working well. And again, I told you, like, whether the product which the consumer is looking for, whether your transferred trait is amenable for the delivery into the final food chain, final food product, final consumers, they are happy with that. Because you cannot ask them to change their food habit. You cannot ask them to take, because I developed the trait, you eat this kind of food, this kind of food preparation, you cannot change. You have to put many of the biofortification programs which targeting, you should not disturb the food habit of the people. Without disturbing that, you have to introduce the trait of interest. Without compromising the yield, without compromising anything, we should introduce. So unknowingly, you have to introduce in that, which we lost for the more than 7,000 years of evolution process. The only thing is, by using the new tools, the markers or the genomic information which we have, we try to precisely introduce them without any other foreign gene, etc. We are just transferring from the donor to the needed things. So there we have to be very careful on which trait, which place which are introducing, and finally end up the consumer. So these are the things you have to be taken into consideration while taking any challenges. Took it the reality, check the reality first itself, then challenges can easily be overcome, instead of at the end of the day after ending the product and no takers, then it will be a problem. So this way there are we cannot say that all the traits can be handled by marker-assisted breeding program. All the traits can be precisely transferred. Only few traits which we are nowadays amenable. There may be science may grow, many times a new trait may be discovered and new markers may come. That time it become user-friendly, then people can use it. So the user-friendly marker system and also the need of the hours, those things also be taken care while designing your marker-assisted breeding program. So this is my experience which I want to share you, how as a starting from a plant breeder and end up with the molecular breeding, and how the difficulty of the field the plant breeder are facing, and how the difficulty the trait development people are struggling with the technology and finally come up with the lines. and how to match these things and end to the product. Finally, ultimate, our client is a farmer. They have to take the high yielding with the rate of interest, then only it go to the market and fetches the price. So this is why this is the thing which I want to share the knowledge with you, and how the programs, how you can plan a program as a senior scientist level, as a student level, how creatively you can think on which trait, how to, you cannot say, go to your professor, sir, I want to do this trait, which are very novel, but unless you have the specific take off in the field and specific use in the local community, you cannot, nobody will invest you to do the costly process. So again, you should be realistic in that, what is the local need, what is the need of the specific place, then you can start try to put a trait of interest in your specific varieties or the hybrids, then you will be, program will be successful. Otherwise, it will be it's not a realistic one, but it is, you can make it, many challenges you can come across, but when you come to a reality, then it will be a big question at the end of the day. So before that, we have a experience, and you can talk to the people who are experienced on the particular thing, and you can design the program. So this is the knowledge I want to share you for the younger generation breeders, or the biotechnologists, or the people seniors who is guiding them. Just I want to share the knowledge, whatever I learned for the another last 2 decades of working on the marker-rested breeding on the tribe. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and patient listening. If any question I can take.
Now, the presentation by Professor Nateshan was over. It's open for discussion. If you are having any doubts or questions, you can pose. Any clarifications needed by the participants, you please now raise.
I think last 1 hour they will be very tired on listening.
Actually,
usually after lunch session is very difficult for the speaker and also happy for the listener.
The presentation is very excellent, very nice.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Really good. If there are no questions.
Sir, one question has come, sir, here in the chat box.
If any question by chat box, please read.
Yes, sir. They are saying, can you throw light on super sweet corn development?
Sir, the question is, now most of the sweet corn types which are SH2 gene most of the time. Now the private companies, some of the Misty or the Sugar 75, these are the 2 hybrids which are in the market now, which I hope there is a enhancer, SE. There's additional gene now they are putting in order to increase, maintain the sweetness, but that inbred lines are not available in the public universities. But the companies having the sugar enhancer, but maybe it will be there in our gem blossoms. But there is a possibility that not only SH2 based maize sweet corn hybrid, now enhancer also people are looking, and carotenoid is the additional trait. This is a new thing, new concept people working.
Sir, this is my question, sir. VLN Reddy. Yeah. Sir, why only yellow maize is famous, sir? And particularly we can see in the market. Why not? There are, you have shown so many colors. What is the problem?
Okay. I don't know, luckily or unluckily, or people, breeders selected yellow, mostly yellow type and orange type. These 2 are common. Many of the high yielding inbreds or the best performing inbreds are yellow and orange type. This is again, it's I already the poultry industry, the egg yolk color has to be, we cannot use white maize for the poultry industry because yolk color will not be there, because more than 80% cereal being fed by maize only poultry. So unless you have color, you cannot go to the market. But people selected towards either yellow or orange types for most of the hybrids. They selected because you cannot go for white, we cannot go for violet, because those things are entirely maybe yield penalty or something will be there in the conventional selection. So they selected mostly on yellow and orange with the dent or plain type. This is the mostly commonly available any hybrids you can see. White
One
type,
more.
mostly African program they use for the food.
White types.
So one question has come, sir, in chat box. Any hybrids released having enhanced beta carotene?
Yes, IRI have released, our is in the multi-location trial. IRI, last year they released type beta carotene types. And also Almora also, I think they are in the process. But there is a CIMIT hybrids are there in African market, and many African companies, African maize program, they have the lot of beta carotene maize. Last 3-4 years, it's a market.
So one more question, sir. What is the pattern of beta carotene accumulation between embryo and endosperm of maize kernel? Is it
It
same?
is accumulated throughout the grain. There is not much like low phytate is mostly accumulated in the embryo.
General parallel
It's in the totally you can get in all endosperm.
So what about pathway, sir? Is it beta carotene pathway is same in golden rice and here maize?
No, but in the case of because rice, the pathway is not at all exist. That pathway they introduce the gene, so that's why it's 5' synthase gene being introduced into rice, or some same base gene also being introduced in rice.
Okay, sir.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have one question, sir.
Yes, happy.
Sir, I'm Rupesh from Department of Genetics and Plant Breeding.
Okay.
So my question is just to know there are different kinds of corn, no, sir? Sweet corn, popcorn, flint corn, dent corn, likewise.
Yeah.
So of all these corns, in which corn is more amenable for biofortification?
The question is, I will put it another way. Which is people more consuming, then that will be the best one. So now you tell me that which one you are eating more.
Hello?
Which corn you are eating?
Of course, it depends on the consumer's preference, no, sir?
Okay. Diplomatic answer, no problem. So target the people. Those, for example, African program people consume maize as a forage and they use flour mostly. They easily succeed in getting the beta carotene introduced, will be successful. People,
Okay.
young children, you cannot ask them to prepare whatever they like sweet corn. So if you target young children vitamin A deficiency, put a beta carotene in a sweet corn, then will be happily they will eat.
Yes, yes.
So like that, it's all again a consumer who likes what food like, put it in that.
Okay, thank you, sir.